One of my ministries, as many of you know, is to give parish missions and retreats around the country. And one February, I was giving a retreat in Florida. I like to do my retreats in Florida in January and February. I'm no dope. And there I was on Melbourne Beach giving a mission. And you know, when you arrive on Saturday to preach at the Vigil Mass, I wanted to stop at the supermarket and just get some water and some things. And I noticed a woman outside with a cart. Homeless woman, obviously. And I noticed her, but I didn't say anything. And I got what I needed, and I went to the rectory. And I began the retreat, and every day I was in Melbourne Beach, somewhere in that town, I would see this woman. She had her cart, usually a hat, late middle-aged. And every time I would see her, I would think, maybe I should say something to her. Maybe I should ask her if she needs anything. Maybe I should find out something of her story, because she just seemed to show up everywhere that I was. But I never said anything to her, never asked her anything, never engaged her. And the last night of the mission, I was preaching a homily about how we need to care for and tend to one another. And the realization of that woman was right in front of me. And I made a confession to those at the mission that night. I looked out and I said, you know, I saw a woman in your town all week, and I knew she was homeless. I knew she was in need. I knew she had a story that I probably could benefit from hearing, but I never asked her, never engaged her, never gave her anything. And that's my failure. But I encourage you not to make my mistake, not to fail in the way I did. And then the next morning, I left that town. And that evening, I opened up my email, and the subject line of the email said, "Homeless woman, Melbourne." And I opened up the email, and this is what it said. "Dear Father, we are the couple with our 2 children who sat on the right side of the church each night during your parish retreat. And we were there for the last night of the retreat, and we heard you talk about that woman. And when we were driving home past the 7-Eleven, we saw her. And I said to my wife, how could we possibly pass her by after what he said tonight? So we pulled our van over. I left my wife and my 2 kids in the van. I went across, and I asked her if she needed anything. And she said she heard that night it was going to be cold, even for Florida, and she could use some place to stay. And so, Father, we took her home to our house, and we gave her a warm meal, and we found out her name is Mary, and she used to be a teacher, and her husband died, and she became very disoriented, and she had some psychological problems, and she's been living on the streets ever since. And after hearing so much about her story, she's now asleep in our guest room, and she will be leaving us in the morning. We want to thank you so much for the gift of Mary." Well, do you know how I felt when I read that email? First of all, like an utter failure, and yet maybe just a little bit of a success, because where I failed, someone else who simply heard me say the words were able to respond to those words and lived Christ in that moment. In today's gospel, we see a Jesus who addresses human need. There are hungry people, and this is what Jesus says you do. You take what you have, you bless it, you break it, and you give it away. You take what you have, you bless it, you break it, and you give it away. And when Jesus does that, the multitudes are fed. And the lesson for us is clear. We are called to take the stuff of our lives, whatever it may be. We might not be able to do extraordinary things, but maybe it's an act of kindness, a smile, a kind word to someone when you're annoyed or when you're tired or sick. But to take the stuff of your life, to bless it, to break it, and give it away. And when we do that, Jesus becomes present again. I will always remember that couple in Melbourne, Florida, who taught me it's more than just words. You can say it, but what really matters is when you can take it, bless it, break it, and give it away.